everyone, welcome. I'm Rachel with Artisans of Nations, a storytelling platform dedicated to honoring Indigenous voices through arts and culture. We're here filming live artist talks at the 5th annual Muscogee Art Market in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's been an amazing art market here and such a joy and honor to witness different artists of different ages all throughout the southeastern area of Oklahoma and beyond. But very honored to produce these artist talks in partnership with Muscogee Nation. And we have our last conversation with none other than our guest, Shelley Patrick. She's an interdisciplinary artist, independent scholar, and Muscogee Nation citizen from the Stillwell and Tahlequah area of Oklahoma. She comes from a family of artists and educators and holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Institute of American Indian Arts, where she is currently completing her Master of Fine Arts. Her work spans murals, installations, and fine arts, and is deeply rooted in the visual language of Southeastern Indigenous symbolism, specifically the iconography tied to Muscogee Nation. She has also shown work across the country and internationally, collaborated with Disney Imagineering, and currently serves as the gallery tech for Mvskoke Waters Gallery, the only tribally owned and operated fine arts gallery in the greater Tulsa area. Welcome, Shelley. We're so glad that you can join us today. And to start us off, I have a very important question. You come from a family full of artists and educators, and your mom, Phyllis Fife, is a well-known artist. What was it like growing up in that creative household, full of art, full of colors, full of imagination? Was there a moment that you knew that this was my path too? Share with us, what were those feelings like and those memories?
I've actually felt like an artist my entire life. My mom, she would teach me how to do artworks whenever I was a young child. We did a lot of potato prints, which was fun. We went and harvested clay out near our house, and she taught me how to process that. We made little pinch pots and sculptures. She taught me about printing. She was always sewing, so I got to learn about fashion and sewing from their fashion line, the Fife collection. Mm. And then, of course, any of my aunts and uncles and cousins who were in the arts, they taught me everything. If I had questions, I had so many resources of people. And also, it was really nice because I met a lot of Native American artists, especially well-known ones. Wow. I didn't necessarily know because I was a little kid. But later on, I was like, wait, I've met them. I know all of these very famous Native American artists basically since I was a young child. But I feel like that was something I pulled in at the experiences even as a young child, not necessarily knowing them, but I learned so much even just watching, having the perspective of getting to learn about the arts. And I was very fortunate that I learned about our Native American arts, specifically about Muscogee Nation, views, perspectives, and what was ours and what was other tribes' artwork before I learned what would be typically considered European standards worth of art that you would learn in schools. And so I knew a lot about our tribe and the tribes around us before actually learning about the arts outside of the Americas.
Your work has shown everywhere from Santa Fe, New York, and internationally, which is quite remarkable. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you walk us through your typical creative process and how do you approach a new piece?
Well, I'm always getting inspiration from everyone, everything, anything I do. It could be just going on a walk. It could be going to someone's presentation, a film, hearing music, smell. All of your senses can affect your inspiration, of course. And I daydream a lot. Not to not pay attention to the world, but something will inspire me. I'll start really thinking about it and relate it to my life or perspective. And that's where I start cultivating my ideas for my artwork. That eventually turns into trying out different creative areas, trying out different layouts and compositions. That's how I've tried a lot of mediums, a lot of different styles of artwork, because I'm interested in being a very well-rounded artist. And I have been since I was little. The more I know, the better I feel about it. And the more I can express myself through the creative arts of my own emotions and perspective, but also my understanding. And the more I learn outside of me and bring into what I have for my ideas, the more I can really delve into further research into those ideas, the more I can figure out more defined questions or viewpoints that if I need to know something from my family or my tribe, then it helps me be able to relate to that more so, but also intake that information more effectively.
Is there a specific medium or technique that you gravitate the most towards?
Well, I really love geometry.
Nice.
Just in general, is also one of my favorite subjects in school. But geometry and physics actually play a lot into how I see the world. And I like learning about a lot of the sciences, math and sciences for both of those. And those tend to show in my artworks. I tend to be more geometric shapes, which is how I really had a rapport with Southeastern iconography or imagery. A lot of our artwork, it was incised line work, a lot of circles, a lot of very specific elements like this, where it's crossing and being the four directions. And then, of course, time and space, being past, present, and future. All of that is what I see in my perspective, what I live as a Muscogee artist and a Muscogee person. And I really try to, well, I don't try to, it just comes out in my artwork of all of those elements culminating into my viewpoint of whatever it is that I'm developing for my piece.
And speaking of symbolism, in our conversation before this talk, you mentioned it as a visual language and what it means to you, especially for Southeastern Indigenous artists and art and culture. Since your work heavily draws on the visual language and symbols of the Muscogee Nation and Southeastern Indigenous cultures, how do you select which symbols to incorporate, and what considerations guide you in representing those authentically?
Well, like I said, I learned a lot about what was our symbols, what was our dress, what was Southeastern, and what was Muscogee Southeastern as opposed to, say, Choctaw Southeastern. After a time, you start noticing those differences in the geometry of those pieces. If you start picking apart, not picking apart, but if you start breaking apart the different design elements, like ours tend to have a lot more flowing movement. They have a lot of like rounded pieces, as opposed to if you looked at Chickasaw, they have a lot more triangular pieces, a lot more. We have line work like that as well. That's not as rounded, but there is a difference. Like the more you study it, the more you can actually see, oh, this is from this area, this is from this other area, this is this tribe, this is our tribe. Plus the fact that I am not afraid to ask questions, and I will ask everyone, where did this come from?
That's good.
Why is this way? How do we use this? And then the symbolism, the visual language is that we have some line work, some imagery and iconography that's going to represent voice, going to represent the wind, water, land, person, in some elements, thinking of it as our past, present, and future. That's going to be time representative, but we are very land-based in our symbolism. And so learning to use all of those in a respectful and more accurate manner lends to having a better conversation through the artwork or through the imagery as a Southeastern person, and gearing it toward being a Muscogee citizen.
And you've shared that many Southeastern symbols are misunderstood or misnamed as sun circles, when in fact, like you've mentioned, they are land-based, place-based. Can you explain and expand upon this, about these misconceptions and their true meanings?
Absolutely. So in the 70s, there were the Funderburk sisters. They wrote this book that a lot of people know, especially if you're Southeastern, called Sun Circles in Human Hands. They were in education. They wanted to, or they recognized that a lot of our imagery and symbolism needed to be extracted from the pieces and kept in a visual aspect. So they wrote this whole entire book. However, of course, them not being Southeastern, not being from any indigenous tribe at all, they didn't have the understanding of what was behind those symbols, but they knew that to put them on paper or to recognize them, to redraw them and make sure that they were kept in record, that it would be important for us and important for future researchers, students, and as well as all the tribes themselves. So despite the fact that they were not indigenous, they did a great favor to us ultimately by doing so, because some of the items and imagery they saw no longer exists.
Wow.
And they called it Sun Circles in Human Hands. The thing is, a lot of those circular designs weren't necessarily celestial, so they are misnomered as sun circles. And where in fact several of them are land-based imagery, or like I said, time and placement. We're very much connected to all of our existence. And so some of those symbols might have scalloped edges around those circles. Well, that's going to be mounds in other directions. It's going to have the cross symbol in the middle like this. That's the 4 directions. That's also representative of how we lay out our fire, the wood in our fire at our stomp grounds. There's going to be elements in there that weren't necessarily celestial. A lot of them were more land-based, as a lot of our stories and songs and just a lot of elements in our culture are. So we do, unfortunately, as Southeastern people, have misnamed a lot of things, in fact, over time, but the sun circles are not, in fact, mostly sun circles, but some of them are celestial. It's like a categorization of all of these elements, which we deal with now because that's so well known now, but to learn and understand what they actually mean is, of course, very important. And we want to pass that on to other people as well, that despite the fact that we love that they recognize that those were important and wanted to keep them in record, come to us, we know what they mean. And sometimes we can tell you and sometimes we can't, which is not to be bad to anyone or mean to anyone, but some things are kept only for us as well.
Right.
And so the understanding of that is what also lends to the language element of our visual imagery symbolism.
It's very rich and totally understandable about what's sacred to share and not to share.
Right.
So within that respect, how do you hope your work educates both your community members and those abroad?
Well, I hope my artwork, my use of symbolism and visual language, and my own research as an independent scholar, since I do freelance writing as well, I hope all of that helps future researchers, future students, people who want to understand and study and see that perspective of those elements in use altogether. That gives an idea of how those symbols are used, how they could be understood, and even seeing an art piece, though, art is very subjective, of course. It's up to the viewer of what their own perspective is going to be, what they relate to. However, you can still relate those images within the composition, and that composition can still tell you a lot about that, oh, these must be related, they're in the same piece. Oh, these aren't in this other piece. Maybe they're not related to those same symbols, but through the geometry, through the visual language that I'm seeing here, they look like they're potentially from the same area. Of course, going into that means that titling an art piece is incredibly important. I tend to use our Muscogee language to title pieces, or something that's relevant to being a Muscogee person to title my imagery. And putting all of those elements together, especially if you study art in any way, or if you're not familiar with art, but you start seeing those, you'll start seeing patterns, start recognizing things being from one area to the other. So I'm hoping that my artwork helps people to recognize those symbols as being Muscogee, as being Southeastern, once they learn the artist is Southeastern and Muscogee.
Just to give our audience, for those who are watching online, is there anything else that you would like to share about the tattoo on your arm? And again, for those who are unfamiliar, what's the name of it and any other meaning behind it?
So this tattoo, for one, it would actually be more upright like this. The 2 dots on the top, they would actually be holes where a thong would go through, a leather piece. And this is going to be a shell, a clay, or potentially a copper piece that you would wear on your person. And the symbol, we tend to call it an infinity symbol. That's just one of our artists started calling it that, and we've been calling it our Muscogee infinity symbol, or our connection to the past, present, future, our connection to our place in the earth, our connection to space, our connection to like where we are individually as a person, but as in our existence as well. And like I said, those 4 directions is the 4 winds. It's also north, south, east, west. It's going to be the how we have our firework laid out, of course, in our original areas that are sacred. And I like having it because it's all encompassing of our existence altogether, how we're integrated into ourselves and all of those elements all within one circular area. So it's like all of our existence, all of our humanity, all of our Muscogee, everything that we have all together is one.
Mm-hmm. That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You know, we've talked about you as a living working artist, an independent scholar, and a gallery tech for Mvskoke Waters Gallery. Please tell us a little bit more about that. What's your role there, and what are your hopes for the gallery?
Well, I am so excited to be the gallery tech at Mvskoke Waters Gallery. It's our very first fine arts gallery. And all of the artists within that gallery are going to be enrolled in Muscogee. They are going to be represented by our gallery. So we represent the artists within our gallery, but the artwork of the artist is what represents us as a people. So we get to show that to the world. We get to show that to anyone who comes in. We get to talk about it. We have our own space to have our arts be seen from our perspective. And as a Muscogee person and it being run by our tribe, that means that we also have more autonomy over what goes into it, how people see us, how people understand us, because we are the initial source of information for ourselves. And of course, artwork speaks a lot to how people relate to and understand the world. Art is one of the very first languages to exist, if not the first language, visual language to exist. So seeing it come together. This is something me and my family of artists have been talking about my entire life, and I get to actually run that, but I also get to have the community with my artists. I get to have our art be in community with everyone who is non-Indigenous, teach them about us, people who live on our reservation, because we have our gallery on our reservation. And so it goes a long way to understanding us as a people and to help us understand ourselves, but also to really develop our perspective, our love of our own form of the arts, and have a really strong voice in our community.
That is so important. And congratulations to your tribe and your community members for bringing that all together for your people and its history to continue to live on. Where can we find the gallery, and where can we find you?
Well, I'm typically going to be at the gallery right now. It is at Jinx River Walk in Jinx, Oklahoma. It's right along the river, about just a few minutes from River Spirit Casino. I'm typically going to be there all the time, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Perfect.
As well as other times. And I'm in the Tulsa area. If I'm not at the gallery, I'm potentially with my family or somewhere else doing art, doing artist opportunities. I do travel around a lot, but I have such a strong connection to my family and our community and our place. It's not particularly hard to find me.
How can we contact you as well for any of our listeners that may want to definitely learn more about your visual language as a Muscogee person and purchase your work?
So I have a website. It is shelleypatrick.com, SHELLEYPATRICK. I can also be contacted through our gallery email. That's going to be a great source of connection with me and with, of course, our people in our arts. That's MvskokeWaters@gmail.com. And that's spelled the way we spell our tribe through the Muscogee language. So it's MvskokeWaters, so Muscogee Waters @gmail.com. And then I myself have an Instagram that is Shelley Patrick Art, and that's a lot of where I have my behind the scenes art as well. And then Muscogee Waters Gallery also has an Instagram and a Facebook, both called Muscogee Waters Gallery. Like I said, spelled MVSKOKE, Waters Gallery.
Thank you so much for your time, Shelley. Thank you for sharing such rich history and educational content with us. I hope that our listeners and I myself will be included to learn more from you. So thank you again for your time and sharing your wisdom. All the best to you and your work. Many blessings.
Thank you, Mado. I appreciate it so much.
Mado. Thank you again for listening and joining our conversation here at the 5th Annual Muscogee Art Market. You can find Artisans of Nations online and on Instagram. You can listen to our podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple channels at Artisans of Nations. It's been such an honor to be a part of this weekend. Thank you again to our listeners. Thank you to Muscogee Nation. And thank you to the artists who have shared their stories, their wisdom, and art with us.